For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, hosted by GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Noel Jammer. First three segments, talking NBA. We talked the playoffs so far, previewed the games for tonight, and talked about the lottery tonight. Now we're at the NFL. We're talking about minicamp, some news coming out of minicamp so far. Then after that, we're going to end off talking about Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals. So, NFL minicamp. It started. It's been going on for the past 2 days now, and there's been a lot of news, I guess you could say. A lot of news out of Cleveland, New York Giants, Buccaneers. It's been, a lot of good news. So let's talk about, and just good news that I want to talk about. So let's talk about it. First thing I'll talk about is, sorry, it's something on my tongue. No idea what that is. First thing I'll talk about, the Browns. A lot of the social media, article writers, all those people in Cleveland have been kind of trying to tear Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders apart. They're trying to, kind of break them, I guess you could say. Try to, what's the word? I guess trying to diverge them. They're always asking the two, who's better? Who do you think? If you're been following along with that, you can probably see that the Browns' social media is trying to, tear them apart. And it's honestly very sad to see. You don't really see a team in the NFL take two quarterbacks in the same draft. You really don't. You don't ever see that. Especially, almost back-to-back rounds in 3 and 5. Kind of surprising. But they're both great quarterbacks, don't get me wrong. So, why are all these social media, people, why are they all trying to tear them apart? In a interview, they are asking, Shedeur, oh, Dillon Gabriel's hands are too small. Are you going to take advantage of that? Why are you trying to tear these two guys apart? I don't get it. They're both great players, and even though they've only been together a few weeks now, just, through training camp, draft, all that stuff, they already have a really close bond with each other. They're both, they were phenomenal quarterbacks in college. Gabriel obviously being a Heisman finalist. And they both obviously have a lot of respect for each other. They both had great seasons. Oregon made it to the Big Ten Championship and the playoffs. Travis Hunter and, Shedeur Sanders had a great season out of Colorado. A huge improvement from 2 seasons ago when they only won 3 games. The Browns' social media, I don't know why they're trying to tear them apart. This is something that the Browns really need. The Browns are in desperate need of, a good, reliable quarterback. And, I think that Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders are going to be those two guys after the season, especially. I think after the season, their whole house will be, I think Joe Flacco will be gone. I think he might retire. Kenny Pickett, I think he'll be gone by midseason. Deshaun Watson, he's not playing. He's basically he's just taking up money now. But this is a big year for these two, They're both fighting for that spot, that backup spot behind Joe Flacco, who's probably going to start over both, who will be the starter most likely, who I think will be the starter. And these are, it's a huge season for both of these guys, coming in, drafted, and they're both fighting. So why is the media trying to tear them apart, even though they're, trying to make a name for themselves? Especially Shedeur. Shedeur has a lot of, what's the word? What is the word I'm looking for? Shedeur has a lot of, I guess you could say, I'm not really sure the word I'm going for, but he has a lot to prove. That's what we're trying to go for. He has a lot to prove, I wouldn't necessarily say that. He's a great player, but, he's got a chip on his shoulder. That's what I'm looking for. He's got a chip on his shoulder, being taken the 5th round when he's projected, a first-round pick. It's a huge drop-off, and he's looking to, come back and bounce back off this. And with this media, it's not good, them trying to tear each other apart, but it's giving them, motivation to be better, not try to compete against one another, but to be better players and better teammates. Just be a great team, work hard, work together. And I think this can be good for both of them, but it's also going to tear them apart. But could. But these guys are both great quarterbacks, and they both can see that. So I think this honestly will only bring them closer together, and they're both going to help each other find flaws in their game to help improve each other, which I think is great. Another thing I'll talk about, more quarterback situation, Jackson Dart. It's confirmed that he's going to be the third string at the start of the season behind Wilson and Jameis Winston, which I think is great. Sitting out a season is never a bad thing. It really is not. I wouldn't say a season. Maybe they both get hurt or they both, play poorly, so he steps up. But I think this is a great thing for him. I think him, sitting behind two phenomenal all-time quarterbacks, behind Russell Wilson, one of the greatest of this generation, and Jameis Winston. I mean, he's kind of like a goofball, funny guy, but he's the all-time Bucs passing leader, and he's a great quarterback. He just makes some questionable throws here and there, but they're both great mentors for him to look onto. They both had phenomenal careers, and it's great for him. They're also working on trying to fix his snap count. They're going because if you watch that Coach Gruden video, or maybe you just follow him in general, that Ole Miss, his snap count was just clapping. That's all it was. He didn't say hike. He just clap, and they're gonna try to work on that. They're trying to get him to say the snap count instead of just clapping, because in NFL that probably won't slide. It could be a lot more difficult. Defenses can read it a lot easier, so they're going to set hut green 48, all that a proper a normal cadence count. So him sitting behind, like I said, these two all-time quarterback. I wouldn't say they're both all-timers, but very respected, well-respected, well-tenured quarterbacks. Vets of the game. This is only going to be great. This is great for him. He's getting that experience, and he's going to learn behind two really good quarterbacks, and he will be a great quarterback by the time it's time for him to step up, which I believe if they play poorly, he'll step up, but he could be the starter by next season, depending on how well they do this year. So I'm looking forward to that. The final thing I want to talk about for minicamp, Shiloh Sanders. He signed as an undrafted free agent with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he's shown very, very promising signs of being a great player for them. The Bucs have taken a lot of good players in this draft. Ime Udoka, receiver out of Ohio State. He's done phenomenal in minicamp so far as well. But Shiloh Sanders is a great pickup for them so far. From what I've seen, from the videos I've seen, articles I've read, he has been playing great. He's had great reads on balls in practice, doing great in drills. His footwork is phenomenal, and he's hits. One thing about Shiloh, he is a very, very hard hitter. He will lay his shoulder. He will get low and crack you. And I mean that. He hits hard. A lot of people on TikTok, I'll see comments here and there. I see a Shiloh Sanders edit here and there, which is kind of funny. But I'll see a lot of the comments. They say ooh, sorry, I got a little tired. But they'll say something funny 99 power, 50 tackle. He hits like a truck, but he isn't on target all the time, I guess you could say. But he was a great player at Colorado. And, people were, during the draft, people thought he might get drafted before Shedeur, which is honestly kind of crazy to think about. But considering how big one of them is, to the people, compared, one's a huge, huge name, and the other, I wouldn't say was compared to the other. But they're both great players. And I'm glad to see Shiloh and Shedeur both shining. I mean, obviously, Shiloh has, he was an undrafted free agent, so he's got a lot more to work for. There's nothing guaranteed for him. Shedeur, I think he's got a little longer. I think he gets, the quarterback, the Browns need all the quarterback help they can get. And I think he will end up, they're fighting, like I said, he's fighting with Gabriel for that probably second string spot. And so they're going to keep him. But, Shiloh's got more to prove. He's got a lot more work to put in. And he's a great hitter, like I already said. He hits hard, but, his tackling is what's going to, affect him. He's not, the most accurate. I guess you say he misses tackles. He misses a lot of, open field. It's pretty easy to get by him. He does hit hard, like I said, but like I said, he just can't make open fields aren't easy tackles to make. They're really not. If it's a one-on-one and it's just you and an opponent and you're closing in, you're getting low, he can make one move and it's really hard to tackle. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's a lot. He tends to make the wrong move a lot more, and I mean a lot more than the right move. But when he's in contact, it's a 2-on-1. Yeah, he'll be fine. He makes a lot of good plays, and it's 2-on-1. He's crashing down. If he's playing strong safety, he'll be crashing down and the corner or linebacker is coming in to fill, so he can take in the outside, and linebacker, corner will go inside, and they'll be fine. But that's what I saw in college at least. But yeah, he tends to have a problem with hitting his, actually hitting his opponent sometimes. But when he hits him hard. And that's something I would not want to be a part of. He hits like a truck, hits like a bus, and he's really been proving himself to have a really good minicamp. And I can absolutely see him getting some playing time this season. Maybe the first, those first 3 games, the preseason games, we get to see, some flashes of him. We'll probably see him playing. But if not, I hope we do get to see him play in the regular season, get to kind of prove himself and see, is he that good of a player, or is he, just kind of a college player? But I think he can fit well in the NFL, and I think he will. So the Bucs did a great pickup with him. Surprised he fell that far. 100%. I really thought he'd get drafted by some team, but the Bucs got a good player in him, and I think he'll be there a little while to, be there a while to prove himself. That's all I got for this segment. Next segment, in the final segment, we're talking about Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals. We'll get to that after the break.